How are you supposed to niche down your podcast topic? How do you make it more specific and just super narrow focus so people know exactly what you're talking about? That's what we're going to cover today, so let's get right to it. Hey everybody, Krystal here today, and we are going to talk about niching down your podcast topic. Niche, narrow your focus, get specific, all the different ways that you can say it. But I wanted to specifically talk about taking your podcast idea and getting super narrow focused with it. Because what does this do? It really tells your listeners, this is the podcast I've been looking for. So I'm going to give you a few examples. So you could have a podcast about sports, or you could have a podcast that covers only the, let's say, the NCAA basketball championship that happens every year for March Madness. Like that's super specific. Or you could have a sports podcast or something that just talks about minor league baseball. That is very specific, and that is going to draw in a different audience than just sports versus something very specific. But I'm going to give you a few more examples of why it's so important to be very specific with your podcast topic. So you could be talking about business, but what kind of business do you talk about on your podcast? Do you talk about finances? Do you talk about growth? Do you talk about a brick and mortar business? Do you talk about corporate business? Do you talk about small business? Do you talk about big business? Do you talk about marketing? Do you talk about accounting, like the back end logistics of how everything works? What do you actually talk about? And if you cannot answer this question, my friend, we have a problem. You have to be so specific with your podcast topic that a listener or a potential listener can immediately say, yes, that is what I'm looking for. I have been wanting to listen to this podcast for so long. So if you've been hanging out here with me for a while, then you know one of my absolute favorite podcasts is The Office Ladies. It's one of my favorite. I did a case study on them, and I love this podcast so much. But the reason why I'm drawn to it is because I'm a fan of the show The Office. I have fallen in love with this program and I love watching it all the time. And so whenever I found out that they were doing a podcast, I was like, I don't even care what they're going to talk about. I love this show so much. I don't care who the guests are. I'm going to listen every single time. And that is the type of reaction that you want your potential audience listeners, like whenever they see your marketing or what you talk about, your topic, whatever they see about your podcast, that's how you want them to react. They want to, you want them to say, this is for me. This is the exact thing that I have been needing in my life. This is a podcast. It was made specifically for me. And that's honestly how I feel about the Office Ladies podcast. I feel like, oh my gosh, this is the indulgent podcast I've been looking for. I've been trying to venture out in more like comedic, entertainment kind of podcast, but I wasn't looking for something that's like, I don't want to badmouth anybody, so I'm not even going to say what I was thinking, but I was thinking like stuff that's all gossipy. I don't want that kind of podcast. I want to listen to something that is about a show that I absolutely love, and that is why this podcast is perfect for me. So I want you to think about some of your favorite podcasts. Why do you love them? Or think about your favorite YouTube channels. Why do you like to watch them? Because I can promise you, the ones that you really like are very specific. They hone in on one particular thing, and that is the reason why you are so drawn to it. So I want you to take your podcast, all the ideas you have swirling around in your head, and say, how can I make this super narrow, super focused? That way my audience knows I created this exactly for them. So I encourage you, tell me in the comments below, what is your podcast topic? And if you're having problems, like you're like, I can't get any more narrow, put it in the comments. I want to know, because we can help you. Like, why don't we help each other as a community get very specific on some of our ideas? And if you think that you have something, you're like, well, it's kind of specific, but I feel like I can go deeper, make sure you put it in the comments below, because I'm going to comment back on all the ones that are there. Okay, let's get back to the video. That does it for today. Those are my tips for getting super specific and starting to really narrow down what your topic is about for your podcast. And I'm telling you, the more specific you can get, the better off you're going to be. Make sure you hit thumbs up if you found this video helpful. Subscribe below. That way you don't miss any of our future videos that come out every single week. Check out these other videos right here that are awesome because they're about podcasting, because I love it so much, and you should know this by now. But remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere.